What's going on, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome to a bit of a discussion video. This is a video I've been meaning to get around to for a few days now, but just been busy with other things, and I haven't had the time to sit down and record it, but now we've got the time. But today we're going to be, of course, talking about, as the title might have already told you, the top 15 side deck cards for this format. A lot of people always ask about side decking. I feel like it's also one of the more complicated aspects of the game. And while it may vary, what cards you choose to put in your side deck, there are definitely a few options that everybody should consider, regardless of their local meta and things of that nature. So I've got 15 side deck cards pulled out, cards that are usually common in a lot of my side decks, or a lot of decks that I build, and also side decks, cards that are common for plenty of other decks that we've seen, run around in the meta. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Also, shout out to some of my Discord members for tossing me some ideas for this a few days ago. So thank you guys for those suggestions. And if you guys have any other suggestions of things that I did miss, feel free to post them down in the comment section below for other people as well. But I decided to condense it down to 15 cards. Of course, there are other cards that could be sided. These are just my, sort of top 15 condensed side deck cards. So I hope you guys enjoy. So the way I'm going to organize this video is we're going to go through monsters, spells, and traps. We'll start with the monsters first, and the first card I want to talk about is Nibiru, the Primal Being. Now, I put Nibiru in here for obvious reasons. Most people, I wouldn't say most, but some people decide to main deck this card. Well, I think it's not a terrible idea on paper, but you could end up playing against decks that literally don't care about Nibiru whatsoever, whether it be rogue matchups like True Draco, Altergeist, things like that. Even Sky Striker, where this card is just going to sit dead in your hand and quite literally will be a rock. It won't be a useful card to you, it will just be a rock doing nothing in your hand. But this is a really great card, of course, side in. A lot of decks are going to be preparing for this card games 2 and 3. And it's definitely a card that you want to be siding in against the right matchup, against decks like Thunder Dragon, Salamangreat, Orcus. Any deck that likes to spam out a lot of monsters, any Guard Dragon variant like Rocket, this is a card that you're going to want to have in Game 2 because you definitely need it as an opposing threat to their plays. They're definitely going to be needing to think about this card in order to perhaps make less optimal plays so they can play around it, make an early Appaloosa to try and play around it as well, which may result in a far less superior board. So yeah, definitely a card you want to put in. It just will give you a competitive edge that you'll definitely need, and your opponent will definitely have to respect this card. If they don't, it might just win you a game. So I've got Nibiru on the list for those reasons. Next up is Dino Wrestler Pankratops. This card is an extremely underrated card as well. I wouldn't say underrated. I feel like a lot of people know the value of this card. It's just amazing. It's a great going second card. It puts a body on your field that can allow you to clear up to 2 cards, one in the battle phase and then one by chaining its effect later on. So this card has a lot of utility in sort of removal in multiple aspects, by battle, by card effect, and the fact that you can chain its effect at any time to clear any threats that may arise during that game. It just makes it super versatile in like all aspects, against back row heavy decks, against decks that have multiple negations, because it can serve to clear multiple interruptions, one in the battle phase at 2600, and then later on you can just chain it to tribute off to hit something, and they're gonna have to waste a negate on it, and if they don't, well, then they just lose a card for free, and that's not good for them, obviously. Good for you, of course. And moving on, we have a card called Artifact LANCEA. There seems to be, every now and then, we have decks that love banishing. It seems to cycle in and out of everybody's side decks as the years go on. It's pretty incredible to see how much impact this card has had over the years, finally getting a rarity bump in dual power as well, or dual devastator. We have a lot of decks that banish. In any format that we have it, we see this card, we see Imperial Iron Wall. But this card, of course, more versatile because it isn't a trap. You can just spring it on your opponent if they're going first, completely shut their turn down. But maybe if you're going first strategy, Iron Wall wouldn't be too bad as well. But LANCEA, again, a bit more versatile because you can, spring it like a hand trap on their turn. You don't have to wait as long. You don't have to wait to set it, activate it, when they already may have an established board. Great against Orcus, great against Thunder Dragon, and that's really about it that I can think of, but those are really 2 decks that can be hurt by LANCEA. Of course, Orcus more so than Thunder, but against Thunder, it does turn off a lot of key cards like Lure of Darkness and cards like Gold Sarcophagus, which are really powerful cards that if they don't have access to while you have LANCEA, then they just become dead for an entire turn, which will make their first turn board even worse. So we got to keep that in mind. Now moving on, an all-time favorite of mine for the side deck when considering any format with back row is got to be Danko Sekka, the classic Danko Sekka. If you don't have the Solemn Warning, if you don't have the Judgment, it's going to be game right here. All your back row are locked down. Neither player can set cards or activate cards that are already set on the field. A lot of decks that don't have normal summons, or at least aren't reliant on their normal summon, find themselves side decking this card against really back row heavy strategies. Decks like Paleo, Altergeist, Sky Striker, we've seen it many times in the past being sided against decks like Burning Abyss, Cliff Fort way back in Duelist Alliance format. So this card's still living up to its reputation as an amazing side deck card, so definitely cannot count it out. And the last monster I want to talk about is none other than the DD Crow himself. I could have put a ton of other hand traps in here like Ash, Ogre, Valor, things like that, but those are a lot of cards I feel like people are opting to have in their main deck, where DD Crow is extremely versatile when it can just banish any card in the opponent's graveyard. It could be a spell, could be a trap, could be a problematic monster that you don't want having them access to at some point later on in the game. It's a quick effect, really versatile card overall, and I think it's a really good side deck card that a lot of people might overlook. Great against Orcust especially, and it could also be pretty good against Sky Striker to banish those pesky copies of Engage out of their graveyard as well. Also pretty good against Salamangreat too, banishing Spinnies, Gazelles, Jack Jaguars, Balinxes out of their graveyard so they can't get value out of those cards. Ton of value in this card. So those are my top 5 monsters. We have Nibiru, Pankratops, Lancea, Danko Sekka, and DD Crow. Now we'll take a look at the spells that I have picked out. So of course, there's no doubt there's a lot of amazing spell cards that we have access to side this format, and the first one I wanted to talk about is Mind Control. Mind Control is a card that a lot of people would main in some strategies. We see it in some going second Orcust builds, of course, decks like Mech Knight. Any deck that really does gain benefit from going second, having the ability to basically snatch steal an opponent's monster for the entire turn, to make them burn an interruption on it, a negation, whatever it may be, is really, really powerful, because if they don't, you get a card out of it in the process, and you're able to do whatever you want with it. You can link it off and do whatever to help gain advantage, to help to make your strategy much more potent against theirs. But it is a really good side deck card against decks that have very, sturdy monsters that really stick to the field very well. Decks like Orcust, decks like Thunder Dragon, things that have really solid built-in protection. Of course, cards like Colossus and Titan being able to protect themselves, and then Girsu being able to protect anything from destruction just by detaching, and it's not a once per turn. So being able to mind control and just steal those cards and basically completely nullify their protection factor is really, really strong. So definitely got to put mind control on here. Next up, we have Dark Ruler No More, and of course, Dark Ruler No More alongside Nibiru are just some game-changing cards, so I had to put them on this list. And Dark Ruler is sort of similar to Mind Control, but it's really when Mind Control isn't enough and your deck really, really struggles against going into these big combo heavy decks. Maybe your locals has a ton of Guard Dragon and Thunder players and Salad players or whatever it may be. Decks that are more so reliant on monsters, because it turns off all monsters they control, negates all of their effects, and they can't activate monster effects in response. So even if they did have a card like Nat Beast, you can just play this, negate it, and they cannot respond to it whatsoever, completely shutting everything off, allowing you free reign to build a board of your own and completely counteract theirs. Now keep in mind, you're not able to deal damage, so in OTK strategies it might not be the best idea, because you won't really be able to OTK and you'll have to sort of assemble a board and wait to OTK next turn, and if they have a comeback, it might be not, it might not end well for you. You might not get that much value out of Dark Ruler. But if you have a combo deck and you're trying to fight back against another combo deck, then this might be the best card for you in the side deck, as opposed to something like Mind Control, because this can hit everything and they cannot respond to it with monster effects. But unless if they, of course, have something like Judgment, Anti-Spell, or Imperial Order, then you're out of luck there. But having the odds of those cards are highly unlikely, since they have to hard draw into those. And a lot of interruption nowadays in big combo decks are coming from the extra deck, so which they have readily available to them at any point in the game, so long as they have the right cards to do so. So Dark Ruler, cannot underestimate this card. Definitely have to put it on this list. Moving on, we have Cosmic Cyclone. We're going to get into some more back row removal. Back row removal seems to be a common theme for side decks, because Back row heavy decks are just, they're just really hard to deal with sometimes if you don't have the main deck tools to properly navigate a set 5 board. Otherwise, they're just going to get a lot of value out of their traps, constantly picking off all your cards and plays that you make until you have nothing left, and then they can take control of the game the following turn. But Cosmic Cyclone has a bit more, things to be said about it other than just clearing back row in a back row heavy matchup. If we want to clear back row heavy in a back row heavy matchup, just for the sake of doing so, we look to a card like Twin Twister, but Cosmic Cyclone has a bit more specific use to it. We look at decks like Sky Striker and True Draco, and things that get their get more value out of when you put their spells and traps to the graveyard. Of course, Twin Twistering a True Draco field of Apocalypse and Disciples, they're going to get to destroy 2 cards on your side of the field, 1 monster, 1 spell, or trap. And against a deck like Sky Striker, they have cards like Kagari, they have cards like Multi-Roll, a card like Multi-Roll, which can allow them to recur those destroyed spells and traps back to the field. And the same thing goes with Orcus. Babel can be retrieved from the graveyard, no problem, and Crescendo has a very decent graveyard effect that it can use the following turn after it negates something. So Cosmic Cyclone is very good for getting rid of something, getting rid of a spell or trap, and getting rid of it for good. A lot of decks really don't retrieve spells and traps from the banish zone at this given point in time, so Cosmic Cyclone is a fantastic side deck card against any deck that can get value from cards that are in the graveyard, spells and trap cards in the graveyard. Even Salamangreat having the ability to reset cards like Roar and Rage. A Cosmic Cyclone will ensure that those cards are gone for the remainder of the game, and you won't have to worry about them at the simple cost of 1,000 life points, and of course it being a quick play is also a bonus as well. Now, I mentioned Twin Twister just a few moments ago against back row heavy decks just for the sake of mass removal, and Twin Twister, of course, I had to put on this list because how many times have you put Twin Twister in your side deck? I know I put it in there countless times against decks that you just need the mass removal for, and maybe your deck, thrives off discards. A deck like Orcus could be an example. Some builds main decking Twin Twister and really back row heavy metas at their locals or whatever it may be, as a decent meta call. If there might be a lot of back row heavy decks in play like True Draco, Sky Striker, Altergeist, having main deck Twin isn't a bad idea for especially mass removal. And sometimes a Twin Twister can be a complete blowout against a lot of back row heavy decks that don't see the right cards they need, and they're really banking on getting some sort of value about stopping your plays with their traps, and you just completely blow them out with that Twin in the standby phase, or maybe you can chain it to a card and just completely wipe a lot of their value and their card advantage on their field off Twin, and maybe you discard something like Orcus Nightmare and you're just ready and you're just set to go. So Twin, of course, a no-brainer to put on this list. 100%. And the last spell I have on here is, of course, none other, the King Deka when it comes to side deck cards right now. Dark Ruler No More is pretty good because monster effects can't respond to it, but how about your opponent just simply can't have any say in the manner whatsoever about this card's activation? Of course, none other than Super Polymerization. This card is a card so good that we see in the side deck more often than not, but again, could be a viable main deck option as well if it suits your deck's playstyle. Super Poly is insanely good, and especially since it's at 3 right now, it's even more insane. So having this as a side deck option, if you have the extra space in the extra deck for Super Poly targets, because this is one of those cards that comes as sort of like a package deal, you do need targets to go with it. Things like Violet Chimera, Diplexer Chimera for just simply Cyberse matchups. Things like Marincess and Salamangreat, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, things like that. There's tons of Mud Dragon of the Swamp, like lots of options, and sometimes it will require up to 1 to 2 to 3 options to go alongside your Super Poly, so you can actually use it in a wide variety of matchups. You don't want to just play Super Poly into Starving Venom if you also have a hard time against Salamangreat. You might want something like Diplex or Chimera to be able to go into off of just 2 Cyberse monsters. Also can be very good against Marincess as well. Not so good early game, but better mid game when they have multiple monsters on field that aren't affected by card effects. But yeah, Super Poly, fantastic card, hands down. Mass removal, they can't respond to it. It's a quick play. What else could you want from a side deck card, and possibly even a main deck card? So that's it for the spells. Now we'll go into the traps for this side deck video. So we talked about Super Poly being a package deal, and the first trap card I want to talk about is also a bit of a package deal as well, and that's Artifact Sanctum. Artifact Sanctum is a classic card as well, sort of alongside Daiko Seka. and Twin Twister, just an all-time classic. We've seen it in side decks and main decks over many formats over the past few years since their release in Primal Origin. But this is a package deal. You can side the triple Sanctum, but you're also going to need cards like Artifact LANCEA, Artifact Scythe, more notably, and sometimes less talked about, Artifact Moral Attack alongside it in the side deck or as well, because you'll need something, of course, to summon off of Sanctum. And a lot of people usually go for Scythe because it completely locks the opponent out of extra decks for the entire turn. So this is really good for going first strategies, and of course a lot of these traps are great side decks for going first strategy, even going second strategies as well, especially with some of the newer traps we've gotten over the past year or so. But Sanctum, incredible card, great against, you know, decks like Orcust and, you know, decks like Thunder Dragon because of easy access to Lancea. Also, you can trap trick this card out as well if you need to, playing up to 6 copies potentially. And you can also summon out cards like Scythe in order to access a complete lockout of their extra deck, or Moral Attack to have non-targeting destruction against some matchups where things just can't be targeted. So yeah, Artifact Sanctum, a very versatile card with tons of options to side into as far as your artifact choice. Next up, speaking of going second trap cards, we have a card like Evenly Matched. This card is incredible strictly because it is non-targeting banishment, which is some of the best forms of removal in the entire game. You have non-targeting destruction like Moral Attack, but being able to not target and also banish pretty much gets around every card in the game unless it's completely unaffected by card effects. So this card is incredible against really big first turn boards that don't put up negation necessarily, just a lot of interruption. Because you can just go second, enter the battle phase, and make them left, you know, leave with only 1 card, and everything else is getting banished. And a lot of effects don't get activated when they're banished. At least a lot of the boss monsters that are being left on the field in today's meta. So Evenly Matched, an incredible card, 100% a valuable side deck option as well. Moving forward, another going first option is There Can Be Only One. Probably one of the best sort of like Gozen-esque rivalry trap cards in the format right now, just because a lot of decks can play through Gozen, a lot of decks can play through rivalry, but There Can Be Only One is different. Each player can only control 1 monster of each type. If a player controls 2 or more monsters of the same type, they must send some of those to the graveyard to control no more than 1 monster. So 1 monster of each type. So that means they can't just have multiple Cybers under a card like Rivalry. They can't just have multiple Fires under a card like Gozen. This is you can only have 1 Cybers, you know, only 1 Spellcaster, etc., etc. So a lot of decks can have a very hard time playing around this. That's why you see decks like Sky Striker get so much value from this card, because a lot of the best decks have multiple of the same type. Orcust, multiple machines. Thunder, multiple Thunder monsters. Salamangreat, multiple Cybers monsters. It's just so potent against a wide variety of things, and if your deck can play it, then I would 100% recommend playing it. Decks like Sky Striker, Subterra Guru, just an outstandingly phenomenal card in the side deck. Okay, gotta mention it, 100%. The second to last trap card I want to talk about for this video, again, is another side deck card for that back row hate, is none other than Red Reboot. Card's fantastic. You can just pay half your life points to activate it from your hand to negate a trap, but they do get to set one directly from their deck at the cost of them not being able to activate traps for the rest of the turn. So it gives you free reign against back row heavy decks, trap heavy decks, just to completely go off uninterrupted potentially, but it does put you on a bit of a clock. You need to put up a field that A, can clear the back row that they have, and B, make it so that the back row that they do have doesn't matter, or C, OTK them. So it does put you at a bit of a hard decision to make. You have to OTK, you have to put up some sort of unbreakable board, or else they might just gain too much advantage out of a trap that they get to set directly free from their deck. Another Judgment, it could be There Can Be Only One, Artifact Sanctum, whatever it might be. They just get to set it for free from their deck because you played that card. So it does put a little bit of pressure on you. It's not great for every deck to have in their side deck against the back row matchup, but if your deck can OTK, 100% have it in there. Decks like Mermail, decks like Mech Knight, things of that nature, a fantastic side deck card in the side deck, of course, against back row heavy matchups. And then the last side deck card I wanted to talk about for traps is Solemn Judgment itself. We see a lot of trap decks playing cards like Solemn Strike in the main, because I feel like even if you do have to go second playing a trap heavy deck, Strike is really good because it can help break already established boards. If they try to activate any effects, you can just negate and destroy and start clearing cards on their turn as they try to play around your back row. Solemn Judgment is a bit better because if you can go first, you can just have answers to a lot of their powerful monster spells and traps. You do have to pay half your life points, but Solemn Judgment really never is dead because you can just always keep paying half, whereas a card like Solemn Strike could be dead at any given point if you don't have the 1500 to pay. So this is a side deck card that isn't for every side deck. It really fits into a certain select few decks that do like to play trap heavy decks, that do like to go first. That this is a really great option, just completely shutting down power plays, lowering the opponent's ceiling very fast so that you can hopefully win the game in the next turn or two. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed these top 15 side deck cards. Like I said, if you have any other ideas for side deck cards, post them down in the description below. And one other thing I should mention, a lot of these side deck cards can be found in that Dual Devastator box, which is really weird to say because I don't think I've ever made a video like this where I can recommend a sealed product that you can get pretty much every side deck card like that's relevant in the format in. So Dual Devastator is an incredible set. Also the 2019 Megatins for those promos like Nibiru and Dark Ruler. And everything else on this list is pretty cheap for the most part. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, Winterkill sign out. We'll see you guys in the next one.